Hello, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Last week we talked a little bit about tasks for year end and then beginning to transition into 2022. So really some year end tasks, got into a little bit into some year beginning tasks as we wrapped up the episode last week. On today's podcast, I'm really going to kind of talk a little bit about setting benchmarks. Benchmarks for us to have a better year in 2022 than we did in 2021. Of course, the last couple years have been rather interesting, I think, for all of us in business. For some of us, our businesses may have kind of been on the brink of closure. I had one of my businesses actually that I own. We essentially had to close. It just didn't work. So kind of everything that happened in the economy kind of collapsed on it. On the other hand, I have my core business that we've grown immensely over the last couple of years. But I think for all of us, whether it's personally in business, we really want to have a better year in 2022 than we did in 2021. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not a person that really is big on setting New Year's resolutions. I actually had this conversation the other night, and having just talking about, hey, so what are your New Year's resolutions? And I kind of said I'm not a person that sets New Year's resolutions, and I'm not really a big goal person. But I think that probably for most of us that are business owners, we do have goals. Sometimes they may be written down. Other times they may just kind of be in our head. And I know in business through the years, I've never set specific revenue goals. You might have, but I think many times the biggest problem that we have with goals is they are much too vague. And so we kind of set, think about, personal resolutions, some of the most popular ones that people put out every year. Well, I want to get healthier this year, or I want to lose weight. And sometimes you have business owners, they may say, well, I want to hit X amount in revenue. And so hitting X amount of revenue is a little bit more of a specific goal than I just want a healthier business, or something like I want to have more cash flow, something like that. So those are kind of more vague types of goals. I think really it's helpful if we get more specific. Of course, I think it's always, and probably most of you are familiar with the concept of having SMART goals. And the first S there is, the S there is for specific. And so I think it's good to have a specific goal and not a vague goal. But I think even more importantly is getting to the point of setting benchmarks. Now, we kind of look at goals in general. I think those goals, we really need to take a holistic approach at our lives. I think many times we kind of go through and we say, okay, I want to have a healthier business, or I want to hit a specific amount of revenue. But I think really kind of taking a step back and really trying to determine what does success look like for you in 2022. So success isn't going to be siloed into one area of our life. It isn't going to be siloed into just our relationships, for example, and on the personal side. It's not going to be just siloed on the spiritual side, or on the mental side, or on the financial side, or on the business side. I think really kind of our goals really need to be set in a way that it really kind of encompasses everything that we're trying to do. You may have a goal of having a better relationship with your spouse this year. That can be a vague goal. A specific goal can be, I'm going to purposefully schedule 2 dates a week where I'm going to leave my phone in the car, and beforehand I'm going to think about where we're going to go, and I'm going to come up with some questions for conversation so we can get to know each other a little bit better. Okay, so that's a specific goal with specific benchmarks on what does that look like. So I'm going to do it twice a week. And I'm going to, and this is what I'm going to do while on the date. So that is a very specific goal with specific benchmarks as to I'm going to know, I can check mark whether or not I did these things or not. Okay, you can have the concept of having specific goals, but then you also need to look at, are you the person that you need to be able to reach those goals? So I think of sometimes business owners, we want to grow these massive businesses. Maybe you have a goal this coming year that I want to grow my business into being $1 million business, or I want to have a $10 million business this year. But I think really we need to kind of take a look at ourselves and say, okay, am I becoming the type of person that I need to be in order to be able to hit that revenue level? Am I going to be able to invest in myself so that I can become the type of person that runs that size of a business? A few years ago, when I started to kind of go through and I was really struggling on whether or not I was going to make my first full-time hire. It was a really difficult decision for me. And of course, I brought some people along as mentors. Actually, one of them I had on the podcast a few weeks ago. His name is Glenn. And Glenn looked at me in a mastermind one time, and he really just kind of provided some encouragement. But one thing that was that one big takeaway when I was in that room that week was, guess what, Josh? You're going to have to kind of work through those fears, number one. But secondly, you're going to have to develop yourself into the person that can release control and begin to learn how to lead other people. And so kind of going on this journey, and I think every business owner that's working on scaling their business has to think about how are they going to be able to develop themselves into becoming the person that they need to be in order for their business to get to the level that they really truly believe that it can get to. I've had a very dear friend of mine that owns a business that had a very specific goal a few years ago. And he wanted to he had a specific number of transactions that he wanted to reach. And guess what? He did it. He reached that particular goal, but there were two problems. Number one, he lost a ton of money in the process, and number two is because he did not develop himself or the team around him in a manner that allowed for them to be able to reach that goal in the right way. So we can really go through and set these goals and just kind of be very bullish about them. But if we neglect developing ourselves and becoming the person that we need to be and developing the people around us into what they need to be able to reach those goals, we may reach that goal, but everything else around us can end up falling apart. So we may reach those revenue goals, but we leave people behind, or we end up losing a bunch of money. We destroy a personal relationship. We neglect our spiritual life. We're not in the gym like we should be, working on our physical body so we can be healthy and be the best person that we can be, showing up in our business every day. And so as we kind of go through and set these goals, like I said, we really do need to take a holistic approach across all these different areas of life when we go through and we set these goals. So let's talk a little bit about setting specific benchmarks. And I talked a little bit about that. How do we go about doing it? Like I said before, set specific benchmarks, not just vague goals. Revenue amount in what timeline? So when you kind of go through and you want to set a certain revenue goal for the year, you need to boil that down. So what is it going to take for me to get to that particular revenue goal? You may boil that down into, okay, I need to pick up one new client every other week. And so once you've defined that, then you're able to go through, you've set that benchmark, then you're able to kind of step back and take a look at, okay, what do I need to do in order to pick up one new client every other week? Okay, we can talk about having more cash flow. Okay, what does that mean? I hear that word all the time. I want cash flow, that type of thing. But guess what? If you can have all the cash flow in the world, but if you're not managing it, okay, and if you're not developing yourself to be able to manage it and get the people around you to help you be able to manage that cash flow effectively, there's not really a big difference between a business that doesn't manage their cash flow and a business that has no cash flow. Okay. Bottom line, at the end of the day, both entities are going to lose a bunch of money. Both people are going to lose a bunch of money because they have not managed the cash flow. So you can say, I want to have more cash flow, but are you going to put those specific benchmarks in place to know how to manage that cash flow, how to bring in the cash flow, and what am I going to do with the cash flow once it's received? You can talk about, I want to put more money into retirement, but once again, boil that down into specific benchmarks. Okay, what specifically, how much do you want to put into your retirement? And then look into, okay, if you're an employee, for example, I'm going to put X amount into my 401k every week. Guess what? As a business owner, I did that this morning. I said, okay, this is how much I want to put into my retirement account this year. We have a 401k plan here in my accounting firm. And I went in and put the paperwork in this morning, and to have that specific amount put in every paycheck, so I know at the end of the year this is how much is going to go in. A specific benchmark. I can check mark that off every week. Did I do this? Did I do this? Okay, and some of these we can put on autopilot as well. I think we should go through and have specific KPIs, whether it's a personal goal and also or a business goal, whatever those goals are, but have these KPIs, these key performance indicators put into place that are going to help us identify what we need to do and whether or not we are hitting these specific goals. That is one in these specific benchmarks. So this is kind of one way of having accountability. To that point, I think we need to get people around us to help hold us accountable. So once we've gone through, we've set these goals and we have these benchmarks. These benchmarks, once again, should be specific action items that I know whether I did or didn't do that I can literally check mark off. I go through at the end of the week and check mark, did I do this? Did I purposefully schedule those 2 dates with my spouse where I put my phone off to the side? I didn't pay attention to it. I developed these questions for conversation. Did I do those things? I can check mark them. If it was only one date, guess what? I can't check mark all the boxes. Okay. Same thing in your business. Did I do everything I need to do to get that one client onboarded every other week? I know whether or not I got that client onboarded. Now you're going to take a step back. And I think this is really, as we get into the finance piece, I think really is important, and that's the way that we develop our budgets. So for example, if you know that you need to develop, you need to onboard one new client every other week, and that's going to get you to your goal, to whatever that revenue number is for the year that you have for your business. Let's take a few steps back, and how do we go about doing this? So you go through and you've identified. So one of the metrics that you should know is how much do I need to spend in marketing to get the lead gen that I need to be able to get that one client onboarded. If I know it cost me $10,000 in marketing costs spent in a specific way to get a client in the door, okay, then I know I need to develop my budget to where I'm going to be spending that $10,000 every other week to get that client in the door. Now I can modify this. We find out we get better at marketing, or we need to shift marketing strategies, whatever the case may be. Budgets can be fluid. But on the front end, it cost me $10,000 to get that client in the door, so I'm going to put that into my budget. I know that for every 3 clients that I onboard, I have to hire a new employee. So you're going to develop that into your budget as well. So as you go through and you set these goals, you put in these benchmarks, now you can boil that down into your budget. And I really do think that budgets, a lot of times I think budgets end up kind of being these historical types of documents that we look at. We take a look at what we did last year, we put the new numbers into this year, and this is how I'm going to spend. I think really budgets should be forward looking. So I'm going to go through it. This is understanding historically, this is what I need to run my business. These are my fixed costs. I understand what those are. I understand what my variable costs are. That's going to be helpful when I look back at my financials, but then my budget needs to be something that not only is it going to manage the business as it is now, but what do I need to do to get me to hit those benchmarks and to hit the goals that I've set for the business. So not just budgets, but also your calendar. So as you kind of get through, you're putting all of these benchmarks into your calendar. So you can go through and whatever this looks like for you and for your business. I'm kind of an old school guy with a planner. I also use a Google Calendar. Kind of everything's in both places. But I know in my day planner, I know every day with my personal goals. One of them is I work out 6 days a week. And so I know every morning whether or not I can check mark whether or not I got my workout in and what I did to help me reach my fitness goals. Did my diet, did I do those things that I was wanting to do? And I know if I follow the plan, if I'm able to check mark that off, that my health is going to be taken care of. I know that if I'm going through and I'm purposefully scheduling time with people in my life that I need to on a weekly basis, that those personal goals are going to get hit. And then the same thing in our business. We kind of go through and we determine through our calendars, through our day planners, and we're scheduling these things, and through our budgets that we put all these pieces in place to kind of help hold us accountable. And then going beyond that, I think it's huge. You have a personal coach, I know I do, that also holds us accountable. So I have a call with him 2, 3, 4 times a month, and we go through, we get on the phone, and he helps hold me accountable as well. So as you kind of go through, you've set this year off. If you've set goals, try to get them as specific as possible. Set the benchmarks in place that you need to have in place to be able to reach those goals, and then make sure that your calendar aligns with what you're needing to do, and then also your budgets are set up in a way that's going to help you to be able to reach the goals that you have in your business and also in your personal life as well. Hopefully this particular podcast brought you value. This is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Please, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the podcast. I would love a review. Have a wonderful day.